Hello everyone and welcome back to the second and final part of the Fallout 3 cut content encyclopedia. In this series, we examine any and all cut content we can find for a particular game or game series. To start off this episode, we'll be picking back up with the final portion of Chapter 4, which was cut items. Due to the high amount of cut notes, around 42, we will not be examining all of them in this video. Instead, we will focus on a few of the more interesting ones. The names of all of the notes will still be listed on screen, but again we'll only be spending time on a select few, as this video would get fairly dry fairly fast if I read through all of them. Check out the Cutting Room Floor or the Fallout fandom if you're interested in reading these cut notes and hearing a couple of cut holotapes. Both sites are excellent resources for those looking to learn more about Fallout 3 cut content. In my 7 years studying the ghoul anatomy, I discover more and more evidence to support my theory on the nature of the not radiological human, or ghoul as they are commonly called. In summary, I theorize that our unnaturally long lifespan is due to a mutation within the autonomic nervous system of certain individuals following exposure to the specific combinations of ionizing radiation with wavelengths below 10 picometers. This mutation, it seems, disrupts the normal process of decay in the neurotransmitters along the spinal cord. Specifically, the transmitters affected are those responsible for cardiac and respiratory function in a healthy human. According to my studies, these transmitters are continually regenerated after mutation, carrying sufficient oxygen to sustain the life of the subject while being insufficient to retain skin elasticity and avoid necrosis, the result of which is the corpse-like appearance of post-mutation humans. It should be noted that exposure to radiation typically results in sickness followed by death, and the X factor that will lead to mutation upon exposure in lieu of the typical outcome remains unknown to this researcher. In the coming months, I'll be assembling my findings on this subject into a full study. Dispatch to Scribe Yearling. Scribe Yearling. Now that Scribe Warswick has been written into the scrolls, I pass his noble task on to you. Journey into the ruins of the city, to the once great Arlington Library. There, you will continue to collect, archive, and catalog the written works of the ancients. You will have 2 paladins sent with you, and you shall be requisitioned an amount of currency in order to barter and trade with outsiders for any books they may present to you. Depart immediately and make haste. We cannot afford to have this work interrupted. Yours in steel, Scribe Rothschild. Note to the librarian, Judy. Due to the electrocution incident, I have to have the self-defense features of the Mr. Handy robot disabled. Please keep this a secret, and I advise you to hide the robot in the closet when it's not in use. Remember to deactivate it too, or everyone's going to hear him in there. If the students decide they're going to pull another prank on the thing, all Mr. Handy can do is run away. Gerard. The Replicated Man Transcripts. A request for help. Transcript of holotape. If you're listening to this recording, it is because you're believed to be trustworthy. I hope that is the case, because this recording puts us both in danger. I'm escaping from the Commonwealth. I'm an android, a synthetic man, a slave. The men hunting me are ruthless and will stop at nothing to retrieve their property. I need to find a doctor in the wasteland to perform facial reconstruction. I also need someone who knows a great deal about computers. I need to have my memories erased and my face altered to look like someone else.
Finally, someone with a modicum of civility and common sense. I represent certain interests, and those interests view this town, this megaton, as a blight on a burgeoning urban landscape. You have no connections here, no interest in this cesspool's affairs or fate. You could assist us in erasing this little accident off the map.
A few other cut holotapes exist in the files, but they do not actually contain audio. Dukov's note has transcripts which read the following. Tara's dead. Crowley fucked up and got her killed. Fucking ghoul. When I'm done, he'll sniff butts with the ferals for the rest of his life. While the other couple of transcripts are marked as holotapes, but do not contain any transcripts or audio files along with them. Those files are Project Purity Holotape 1 and 2 others labeled Notes. Along with these cut notes and holotapes are a few cut image notes ranging from photographs to drawings. Shown here are the visual notes. The first is a photo of the Arlington Library. The second is a bloody sketch of the obelisk found within the Dunwich building. An image of Megaton's atomic bomb, a minefield playground, a Mirelurk nest filled with eggs, an image of the Galaxy News Radio logo, and an image of a weapon. One image file is listed as Leo Stahl but has no image attached to it. Base 05, featured on the Fallout 3 Special Edition vinyl, is a mysterious song with no known title composed by Inon Zur, the primary composer for Bethesda's Fallout titles. Curiously enough, this song is listed under Fortress on the vinyl set, yet is distinctly different from the rendition of Fortress heard in the game. The vinyl set does not accurately name this soundtrack, but YouTube identifies it as Base 4, which is the file designation for the Fortress song in the game. Since no official title has been given at this time, fans have come to call the song Base 05, and has been theorized to be an alternative version of Fortress. Due to copyright reasons, I will not be playing this song for you all, but you can listen to it by following the links in the description. Hidden in the files are a handful of cut audio clips. Several of these audio clips are Alistair Tenpenny's cut radio dialogue back when he was planning to host his own show.
Thank you for listening to Tenpenny Tower Radio Service, brought to you by Alistair Tenpenny. This is Tenpenny Tower Radio, music and inspiring talk for forward-thinking people. And now it's time for another Tenpenny truism. We must turn our thoughts away from that which is imperfect and impure. This has been a Tenpenny truism.
Along with Tenpenny's cut radio dialogue are cut NPC lines, specifically from that of Dad and Dr. Lee. These lines take place towards the end of the main questline with the activation of Project Purity within the Jefferson Memorial's rotunda.
James, this is wrong. You can't do this.
Madison, please. Now's not the time. I'll get the information the Colonel needs, but I need you to...
I won't help you do this, James, not after everything it took to get here.
I need you to monitor the output levels on pumps 3 and 4. Please, step over to the panel and keep an eye on them, will you?
What? What are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense.
Madison, please. It's very important that you do this right now. Just step over to the panel while I access the computer in the control booth.
James,
Please, just monitor the pumps.
By the authority of the President, this facility is now under United States government control. The person in charge is to step forward immediately and turn over all materials related to this project.
That's quite impossible. This is a private project. The Enclave has no authority here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave at once.
Besides these cut portions of dialogue, placeholder files for both Liberty Prime and Dad are still in the game file as well.
Placeholder 10. Placeholder 11. Placeholder 12.
Liberty Prime's placeholders are decked out with a robotic sounding effect, while Dad's placeholder clips...
Surprise! Happy birthday!
Yep. Is just Todd Howard recording some rather brief lines for the Growing Up Fast section of the game's opening. And finally, to cap off the cut audio section, we have some cut sound effects for weapons, which include 2 gunshot variants, and the sound effects for a cut concussion grenade. If you're sensitive to high-pitched ringing, I would recommend turning down the volume for the next few seconds or skipping past. This section will span a few different subtopics, including cut assets, cut graphics, cut actor effects, and some other miscellaneous topics. To start off this section, let's take a look at cut world assets. There are models, objects, images, and so on that were unused in the final product. A few notable mentions are the cut metro signpost for Crystal City, a photograph of the Lone Wanderer's mother and father, which, by the way, appears in New Vegas, pre- and post-war variants of models, and even a television. One image shows the finished map superimposed onto a real-life satellite image of Washington, D.C. More miscellaneous assets range from unused weapon assets and designs, to alternative models, to quotes, dog bullets. There are several cut Pip-Boy icons as well, ranging from alternative weapon icons to alternative and cut stat images to even cut HUD features and skills. Included here is the throwing skill mentioned in the previous video. This section is devoted to items I missed in the previous episode, items I couldn't quite categorize, and other pieces of information I found interesting while scouring the internet. While researching content cut from the base version of Fallout 3, I came across a few interesting tidbits that I couldn't find more information on. Most of it relates to cut locations on the map, evidenced by missing cell ID information. In the DC World area of the map, 02 Adams Morgan, 04 Rock Creek Estates, 07 Freedom Street, 13 Southwest Waterfront, and 14 Buzzard Point are known to exist simply by their absence in the final game. The actual size of DC was originally intended to be larger, and these locations would have filled in those missing gaps. Other locations I read about but could not find much information on include Seven Corners, Jefferson District, Annandale, the former Talon HQ, Monticello Park, Infested Sewer, Waterfront Sewage, Federal Trade Bureau, and Alexandria Arms Basement. If you have any information on these areas, please let me know. I also found a few interesting bits of information while scouring the game's concept artwork. Apparently, Vault 76 was in consideration for making an appearance in Fallout 3, before making its official appearance a decade later. There is also another company created to rival the Red Rocket gas company called Jetstream. It would have been in direct competition with Red Rocket with refueling stations with a jet plane aesthetic. However, since comparisons could be made between the fictional company and the British Aerospace Jetstream line of twin turboprop planes, it was likely scrapped to avoid any potential copyright infringement disputes. It's possible that vehicles were in consideration for traversing the map, similar to the car used in Fallout 2. One concept image shows a machine built out of a modified vehicle and made to hover above the ground. A second concept artwork showcases what appears to be a walking machine to take the place of a rideable creature. And finally, I came across a beta design for the Mylar King. This gave the hostile creature a snapping turtle aesthetic before the more humanoid appearance was settled upon. To kick off our DLC section of the video, let's drop into the Battle of Anchorage in Fallout 3's first DLC. The content will be organized similar to the base game, with subsections dedicated to cut locations, quests, actors, items, and so on. Most of the maps featured in this section are simply test cells created for item testing, map testing, and NPC testing. First up is a copy of one of the sections inside the Operation Anchorage simulation. This unfinished copy is devoid of loot and NPCs, and is not fully traversable without using the noclip command. What I can only assume is Daryl's test cell, this single room contains items found within the simulation. Upon approaching them, some items will begin to illuminate similar to how they behave in the simulation. Another test cell that features a few empty rooms and a hallway that leads into the Void. This cell contains various weapons found in the DLC. They are all arranged on a table for the player or testers to pick up and test out. An unnamed, non-interactive NPC stands alone in this single room cell. He cannot be talked to or even searched upon killing him. Joel's cell, floating in an endless void, contains several terminals found in the DLC, including a few that aren't actually used in the DLC. In the middle of a massive dirt field rests an unmoving floating rock formation. This empty test cell makes me uneasy. Phil's test cell, also named Command Tent, contains a few assets used in the DLC. The cell itself isn't exactly the easiest to traverse or stay within. A bound US soldier will spawn in upon loading into the cell, but will quickly vanish. A modified General Jingwei model will appear as soon as you move forward, and the game will freeze you in place. Even loading into a new cell will not fix the problem, as you'll still be frozen in place. Upon reloading a save and no-clipping out of the room using the TLC command allows us to look into another space. Several unused assets are in this room, as well as a non-hostile Chinese soldier. Turning off no-clip causes a soldier in power armor to spawn in, get electrocuted before your very eyes, and die. Oh, and killing the Chinese soldier turns the Chinese flag into an American one. Phil's test cell is actually located just outside of the map boundaries of the DLC O2 Anchorage Battle World Space, and can even be accessed without the use of console commands and some rather glitchy methods. In this space, which is an expanse of snowy land, the cell contains a collection of smoke grenades with the model and behavior of real grenades. We'll be diving into these smoke grenades later on in the video. There's not much to say about this cell. It seems to be a test of the assets used in the Outcast group's compound where the player first enters into the simulation. This dead US paratrooper was likely used early on in the DLC's creation prior to the concept of bodies dematerializing upon their death. I could not find the ID code for spawning in the body, so we'll have to settle with this photo. A winterized version of a sentry bot wielding a Gatling laser gun was unfortunately cut from the DLC. There also exists an unused minigun variant of this particular sentry bot, as well as an unused Mr. Gutsy also not used in the DLC. Why these versions were left out is unclear. 3 clones of existing models are still present in the files and can be spawned in. The Chimera Auto Tank is an exact clone of the standard Chimera tank, albeit with weak stats. Given the auto in the name, the tank likely has a fully automatic feature. The General Jingwei, seen in Phil's test cell, has a different face than that of General Jingwei. Loading him in using a console command will cause the game to freeze up, similar to in Phil's test cell. Sergeant Benjamin Montgomery is just a simple clone who cannot be talked to and will still follow you around. It appears that at some point in development, the Brotherhood of Steel's Outcast Splinter Group was planned to have Eyebot and Mr. Gutsy robots on the roster, painted in Outcast colors and decals. Other variants of the Eyebot robot were considered for the game, but were ultimately cut in favor of being an Enclave-specific robot. While textures do exist for the Outcast variants, none of these Eyebot variants can be summoned into the game without the assistance of mods. As for the Mr. Gutsy Outcast variant, the texture can also be found in the game's files, but none attached to a Mr. Gutsy model. In the base game, the Chinese stealth armor has the helmet built into the suit, so having another asset labeled stealth helmet seems a bit redundant. It would have been accompanied by the stealth armor the player receives at the end of the simulation. The overworld model and the Pip-Boy icon is the same as the standard recon helmet. A winterized version of the standard Comet helmet minus the face mask. Similar to the night vision goggles cut from the base game, the peepers were intended to be the DLC's night vision goggles. The peepers are visual clones of the biker goggles in the base game. Overall, the goggles don't work particularly well unless the player is in very low light conditions, otherwise their eyes would be burned from their sockets. The goggles also don't fit on the player's model correctly, instead looking as if the peepers are hanging off the model's ear. This combat armor variant gradually regenerates health points and limbs over time. It was likely cut due to the health dispensers located around the DLC area. The implementation of a health regenerating armor likely would have been redundant, hence its eventual exclusion. It's also possible that having the regen armor would have made the DLC slightly too easy. This recon armor is identical to the Outcast recon armor variant, but has the Chinese stealth armor's invisibility while crouching. The armor gives the player +5 sneak, while the helmet gives the player +1 perception. Phil is back at it again, this time with a snowman headgear. In the Pip-Boy, the helmet shares the name and icon of the standard combat helmet. The overworld texture shows a snowman's head, and when equipped, is worn with the head on sideways. This jumpsuit is a winterized Chinese jumpsuit and was originally meant to be given to the player upon completing the simulation. The jumpsuit, while visible as an overworld object, cannot be picked up or equipped. Picking the object up will automatically delete it. The winterized combat armor shown here is a wasteland version of the armor seen in the simulation and would have been given to the player upon completing the quest. However, it is possible, through glitches, to get the regular winterized combat armor from the simulation by dragging a dead body into the simulation pod and spamming the interact key when exiting to drop all of your loot onto the body before it disappears. The wasteland version would have had an item HP of 50 as opposed to the nearly 100,000 seen in the simulation. A standard assault rifle with the simulation skin, but otherwise identical to the base assault rifles. Like with other cut items, this would have been given to the player upon completion of the simulation. Similar to the previous weapon, this is simply a reskinned 10mm pistol and would have been a quest completion reward. There is no SMG seen in the simulation, and therefore, this version only differs from the standard 10mm SMG in the name alone. All stats and visuals are exactly the same. This iteration has the simulation skin. This shock sword variant is a weaker version of the standard shock sword with the simulation's item HP. As with above, this is a weaker version, but will inflict a knockdown instead of vaporizing an NPC upon killing with a critical hit. This version features higher damage. This is a test version of the standard Gauss rifle that uses the laser rifle model. This version does significantly less damage. This is a weaker beta version of General Jingwei's shock sword. This variant has a unique object effect. The no ammo silenced 10mm pistol uses, as the name implies, no ammo and never has to be reloaded. The drawback is the rather quick weapon deterioration. Signal Flare is a clone of the frag grenade with no attached effect. It might have been created for a portion of the DLC, calling for signal flares to be deployed. Exactly as the name implies, it is a silenced 10mm with a winterized simulation skin. As with the signal flare, the smoke grenade uses a cloned model of the standard frag grenade. It has no effect outside of the regular frag grenade explosion and damage. A test weapon for the DLC that features a standard 10mm pistol that fires non-exploding frag grenades. This was likely an early version of a flare gun that was never completed, hence the shooting of grenades that were likely intended to be the signal flares. These three weapons are all test variants of the Chimera tank's standard weapons. Cut from the game is the schematics for crafting the trench knife weapon at a workbench. The player would have combined brass knuckles, a combat knife, and wonder glue to create the melee weapon. The description reads, a state-of-the-art advancement in the field of stealth combat and trench warfare. A collection of 5 cut holotapes feature interrogations and reconstructed holotapes from the pre-war era.
Gary? Listen, son. I know Marilla was rough on you. I'm sorry. I really am.
Gary? Gary?
Right. You can drop the act now. I'm not here to hurt you.
Gary?
Look, just remove the pit boy, and we can part ways.
Gary! Gary!
You know what? Fuck this. Hand me that saw. And turn off the recorder.
You and me both. General gets any more comfortable here, and there's going to be a lot more all-nighters for everybody. Between us, I think the General's taken a little too much interest in the project. You know how the CEO's office is usually a formality?
Yeah, got to. These bombers chase requested. We're pushing the system to the brink with all this crap.
Let's see. If I can just reallocate some of them. Yeah, that frees up memory for the bombers.
I hear Chase is having them deliver his personal effects. Including an overnight cock.
You almost sound like a sympathizer. You really feel sorry for the poor saps?
Yeah, exactly. They're in for a long haul.
You'd think, but they're not like us. Their boys are drafted and left rot on whatever shit assignment they're handed.
No, it's not that at all. I get that the Chinese occupation in Alaska is strictly military, but don't you think they'd settle in a bit?
Yeah, I can. Don't know who exactly this simulation is supposed to benefit, though.
Jesus, are these guys serious? Why would they bring that kind of hardware with them?
I got word from brass at the Pentagon. We're gonna need to modify the ROE in the Chinese to match this.
We just got more field reports from DOD. Hey, Rick, you busy?
Yeah, we can talk about how many times he maybe reworked the way his code looks in this thing.
Sure, but the idea of the Chinese developing something similar isn't out of the question.
Chimera tanks? Come on, man. Even you have to admit these are sheer fantasy.
Look, this is the job. Most of these scenarios will never happen, but if they do, we'll have a plan.
I swear, if Chase comes to us with another ridiculous contingency scenario...
Up next are two cut terminal entries. Military Service number 54-05 Charlie-9301. Clearance level Gamma. Begin transmission. Be advised, Chinese field operations in occupied Anchorage are in a state of flux. Primary field combat post appears to have been moved from Elmendorf, AFB, to civilian refinery site, affecting a southward shift in forward line of engagement. Intercepted radio communications suggest failure of Operation Red Harvest and capture of USMC personnel. Continued artillery barrage from Chugach Overlook suggests veracity of this intelligence. High importance, be advised. Eyewitness account of Dragoon units outfitted in previously unknown infantry armor. This armor appears to be a more recent prototype of the same HG stealth armor captured from enemy infiltrators at the Hoover sabotage. Presence of Dragoon units suggests that General Jingwei may have already relocated to Anchorage. Stand by for confirmation of the report. Begin transcription. Wire relay reports. Overseas intelligence units detail American project. Headquarters Pentagon. Codename of Liberty Prime. American espionage villains appears to be delivered of wave field laser technology from Noble Republic of Chinese Ministry of Science. Reports inconclusive to if the American project has replicated wave field laser weapon. Reports suggest locomotion frame non-typical. Suggest development, betray contacts within civilian contract firms. Possible cooperations with West Tech, General Atomics, Robco. Elevate term Liberty Prime to Alpha on Intelligence Watch listing. End transcription. 6 strangely named NPCs can be spawned in, but cannot be spoken to. Only one can be interacted with, and he only dishes out a few generic Outcast dialogue lines. These NPCs seem to be attached to specific audio tapes or even voice actors. Up next in our journey through cut content is the second DLC, The Pitt, which sees the player assisting Wojnar in obtaining a cure for a series of mutations plaguing the town of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Overall, The Pitt does not have much cut content, so this section of the video will be shorter than that of Operation Anchorage. Similar to Operation Anchorage, The Pitt does not contain any particular cut locations. Instead, we'll again be glancing at a couple of interesting test cells or unused cells left in the files. This abandoned area is a relatively small cell used for testing out assets. This dirt field with rock formations in the center is a testing ground for the DLC's Slave Guard NPCs. 2 non-interactive Slave Guard NPCs are inside of this elliptical rock formation. Both wear leather armor and carry police batons, and neither can be interacted with. This cell, on the larger side, features an outdoor street area with a Welcome to Pittsburgh sign. Catwalks and walkways are built around the space, and a large hole in the ground looking into a pit contains a few dead bodies and skeletons. Simply titled Raider Time, this cell is home to several raiders gathered in a circle, and a few sets of gear for the player to pick up. The NPCs, all named Test Liz, are all clones, both male and female. The male Test Liz variants can be interacted with, though no real dialogue options are available. The female Test Liz variants cannot be interacted with. Shown on screen are 3 sets of armor able to be picked up and equipped. Another test cell. This is a single room cell with 3 NPCs inside of it. The 3 NPCs are all named a variation of test person, and none can be interacted with. 1 female wearing metal armor, 1 male wearing nothing, and 1 test animation of an NPC in a filtration mask cutting into metal are in this cell. A glass container with a baby inside and a bucket are both also in the cell. Finally, we wrap up the locations with Test Trog World. As the name implies, this is a testing ground for the non-hostile NPC, the Test Trog. The cell itself is an infinitely expanding dirt field. Billy McShady is a cut NPC that went almost entirely unused in the DLC with no internal references to speak of. The only possible connection McShady has to the DLC is through the character of John John. Upon entering into the steel yard, John John can be found speaking to a Trog trying to get it to remember him and calling him Billy. Beth seems to have been cut fairly late into the DLC's development. Not only does she have voice lines, but she is also connected to the quest Free Labor. If the player ultimately sided with Wojnar in the questline, Beth would have approached the Lone Wanderer and taken Marie from them. After this, she would be found in Medea's quarters with the baby. Why exactly she was cut is unknown. The Raider Fighter NPCs are your typical Pit Raider characters. They are non-hostile unless attacked, and are unable to be interacted with outside of a blank dialog box. These are non-interactive NPCs seen in the DLC 01 Test Guard World cell explored earlier. This is the Test Trog seen in the Test Trog World cell explored earlier as well. Several test NPCs also exist in the files, with several we have already looked at in the test cells explored earlier. Some of the ones unexplored are the DLC 01 test characters shown here. Overall, these characters are nothing special and, as it stands, add nothing to the DLC. The pit actually has fairly few cut items. Ingots are ammunition and use the overworld model for railway spikes. These ingots were intended to be used for an ingot-firing weapon that was ultimately cut as well. No traces of this cut weapon remain in the files. The Steelyard Gate Key unlocks nothing. Finally, the Scrambler, a ruined garden gnome, is a cut quest item attached to the Free Labor quest. A single terminal entry with no name was ultimately cut. It reads as follows. In response to the increased number of Protectron-related injuries, I've placed a bunch of generic employee IDs next to the factory Protectron pod. The thing doesn't know the difference anyway, so please, if you've forgotten your ID, just use the ones on the table. Remember to return them before you leave for the day. I only have so many. Signed, the management. Up next is the 3rd DLC release for Fallout 3. Extending the main questline past the original game completion point, this added content sees the Lone Wanderer join the ranks of the Brotherhood of Steel to finish off the rest of the Enclave remnants and see the fruition of Project Purity. As with the previous entries, we'll instead be looking at a few test cells that I found on the interesting side, as no real cut locations exist for broken steel. This cell, consisting of a single room and a small hallway, contains 2 radiation traps and a force field inside of it. A platform for the Aquacura salesman, an active Tesla coil, and some other odds and ends are inside this test cell. The only armor I could find cut from broken steel is a variant of the Tesla armor known as the Tesla Resonance Armor. Visually and statistically speaking, this power armor is no different from the base Tesla armor in the game, aside from a few missing textures in the arms and legs, and a higher item value. Why this armor was ultimately cut is unknown, and how it was obtained is equally unknown. The Discharge Hammer, appearing to be a Super Sledge variant, delivers a shock effect on a target NPC once a hit is made. The NPC is then electrocuted, which in itself delivers damage for the effect's duration. The grenade launcher, a gun appearing to have been abandoned in its beta design, is visually similar to the standard combat shotgun. It fires physical grenades at a target, which then detonate after a few seconds. Up next is the lightning gun. Whether this was intended to be its own unique weapon or a laser rifle variant is unclear. Visually speaking, the lightning gun is your typical laser rifle. Firing it, however, is where the differences become apparent. A few seconds after the initial laser fire hits an object or a target, a second laser will then fire in a random direction from where the original laser hit. On some occasions, a gas cloud will form where the first hit made contact, and upon the second laser firing, the gas cloud will then erupt in a small explosion, dealing additional damage plus a knockdown effect to any inside the cloud. The beta Tesla cannon uses the model for the base rocket launcher, though it still has its Tesla cannon effect and damage. The Tesla cannon chain effect has the base model for the Tesla cannon, though when the weapon is fired, the chain effect animation will play instead of the typical Tesla cannon firing animation. It still does the same damage and still dishes out the same effects. Finally, we have Alpha Cell Entry 01 Note, which reads as follows. Project Code AC-PPE-47. Report GATS-2. Project Entry 01 Deconstruction. Upon first look after dismantling of the Alpha Cell, we notice a structure similar to one of our own standard voltaic cells. After further investigation, we notice that the fluid being used as the electrolyte is of indeterminate origin, and have sent samples off to our sister lab under task AC-PPE-47-N. In Fallout 3's third DLC, the Lone Wanderer travels to the mutated and festering swamps of Point Lookout. While the DLC does not contain a particular quest goal, rather a handful of quests and areas to explore, the DLC does contain a bit of cut content. Continuing our trend of not actually looking at cut content in a cut content encyclopedia, we'll be briefly glancing through just a couple of the more interesting testing cells. Phil's test cell for Point Lookout contains some items found in the base DLC, as well as a few items from the final release. Upon spawning in, 2 feral ghouls will attack the player. Joel's test cell, which also contains a few other test cells connected to it, has a Vault-Tec sign reading "Hard work is happy work," some vegetation, and the obelisk found underneath the Dunwich building back in the wastes of DC. As is commonly known at this point, Dark Heart of Blackhall had an alternative storyline earlier in development. This original plot would have seen Obadiah seeking help and obtaining the Krivekna from the ritualistic swamp folk, the Krivibi, in order to destroy it. The player would have gone through similar steps to steal back the book, with Marcella still winding up dead. In a different ending, Obadiah would have either sacrificed himself to destroy the book, or had the player travel to the Dunwich building to destroy the book using the obelisk there, similar to the standard questline. While the quest cannot be started in the game, peeking into the GEC reveals the purpose of this unused quest. It appears that most of the dialogue from the unused storyline of the Dark Heart of Blackhall is contained within it, hence the name Graveyard for Unused Topics. Ghoul Ecology is awarded by interacting with the cut book, 10 Indisputable Rules on Ghouls, that can be found in Phil's test cell for Point Lookout. The perk's description reads, "You have learned to exploit the specific weaknesses of ghouls, and gain a +5 damage bonus when attacking one. Gray Matters, which can only be given to the player through console commands, buffs the damage resistance of the player's head." The description reads, "Protect what's important. With the Gray Matters perk, you'll receive 25% less damage when hit in the head." Mirelurk Ecology, which can only be given to the player by interacting with the cut book, Marsh Hunting Tips Volume 4, Mirelurks, buffs the damage dealt to Mirelurks. After hours of studying, you finally learn to exploit a Mirelurk's weaknesses and gain a +5 damage bonus while attacking one. A code for an alternate version of Punga Power can be used to apply a different version of the Punga Power to the player. But, outside of receiving the notification that the player has been given the perk, nothing else really happens. The perk cannot be seen in a perk menu, and it's unsure if it can even be removed by using a remove perk code. Swing for the Fences applies to melee damage dealt by the player. With Swing for the Fences, you'll do an additional 10 points of damage while any one- or two-handed melee weapon is equipped. An NPC known as Dead Pilot can be spawned in, though he can't be interacted with and is not wearing any clothing. He also appears to be pretty alive for a dead pilot. I believe Twigbag is supposed to be a specific NPC, but when a code is used to spawn them in, their model seems to randomize to any mercenary in the game. While it is possible for Twigbag to be spoken to, they only provide basic dialogue options. Why their model is so randomized is unclear, as no other cut NPC has the same effect. Robert Dunwich is a cut character of mention only that was intended to appear in the original draft for the Dark Heart of Blackhall, before the quest was drastically changed. His brief backstory would have been explained, detailing his obsession with the occult, and giving some basis for why the obelisk is beneath the Dunwich building in DC. The Scar can be added to the player's inventory but has no overworld model. Upon equipping it, a translucent and circular material with what appears to be a stitched-together wound attached to it appears on the player's neckline. Why exactly this is included as armor and something equipable is unclear. Lab goggles share the same model as a standard biker goggles, but give the player +10 to energy weapons. Pause Fishing Aid is a double-barrel shotgun variant that offers 61 damage. The Mucklobber does not have a model or a carry animation. Equipping the item just has the player using their fists instead. Given the sound effect that plays when equipping the item, and the lobber in the name, the weapon was likely a launcher of some sort, possibly launching muck at hostile enemies. As explained earlier, these two cut books can be found in Phil's test cell. 10 Indisputable Rules on Ghouls gives the player the Ghoul Ecology perk that deals out extra damage to ghouls, while the Marsh Hunting Tips Volume 4 gives the players the Mirelurk Ecology perk that deals out extra damage to Mirelurks. Both items share an overworld model with a pre-war book. Security Clearance Alpha puts itself inside the player's keyring upon picking up. I'm not entirely sure what the clearance code goes to, but I would assume a location like the USS Ozymandias. The Great House of Laud, while giving the player the notification of the item being added to the inventory, does not actually appear in the inventory. It also does not have an overworld model. Given its script attachments, it was possibly used for level of detail or LOD/LOD testing. The Safari membership card would have been used within the Plick Safari quest, though its actual use in the quest is unclear. This beta version of Note to Nadine contains placeholder text. Why this version was scrapped and another created is unclear. The New Plague pamphlet appears to be a pre-war holotape detailing symptoms of the new plague and ways to avoid it. Obadiah's letter to Marcella is a leftover asset for the original version of Dark Heart of Blackhall's questline. In this original storyline, and as detailed in this letter, Obadiah sought out Marcella's help in retrieving the Cur of Vecna so that he may destroy it as the last remaining member of the Blackhall family. Wrapping up Fallout 3's DLC cycle in a blend of science fiction and 50s campy style, Mothership Zeta transports the player onto the Zetan ship hovering above the Earth. It's up to the lone wanderer to defeat these dastardly invaders. Overall, Mothership Zeta contains very little cut content, so this section will be fairly brief. This DLC contains several testing cells that reuse the Mothership Zeta world space to varying degrees, mostly using the large space to practice constructing the actual ship interior, and using the space to test out new features and functionalities introduced in the DLC. Phil is back at it again with a new test cell. This one features a few odds and ends from the Mothership Zeta DLC. It's a decently sized one-room cell with several pieces of alien tech. 2 teleporters are in the space. One takes the player into another room in the same cell, while the other takes the player to the DLC 05 test ship cell, which is an empty version of a Zetan ship. On a table inside Test Phil are several baseballs with unique names, ranging from Thingamabob to Doodad to unidentifiable material. The single door to the test cell will force the player into a swimming animation upon walking through it. Jesse's test cell spawns the player onto a massive pool table with some guardian and support drones. You can even pick up one of the billiard balls. Besides that, however, there is not much to do in this cell. I could not find much information on this quest. Upon looking at Death Ray and the Gek, nothing is still attached to the quest, if anything ever was. All I can assume is that this quest involved the Death Ray. Andrew Endicott, Dr. Morrison Rand, Madeline Wallace, and Vin are all cut NPCs. None of these characters have been given dialogue or have any clothing. As it stands, they provide nothing of value to the DLC. The astronaut helmet, which uses the Pip-Boy icon of a combat helmet, is a nearly complete model of an astronaut's helmet. When equipping the helmet, the neck area of the player will become see-through due to missing textures. The helmet itself provides no buffs and has no corresponding suit. This version of Colonel Autumn's uniform is a reskinned version of General Chase's uniform from the Operation Anchorage DLC. Why this version was originally going to be included in the Mothership Zeta DLC is unclear, and why it was abandoned is equally unclear. Regardless, the uniform can still be obtained by using console commands. The Katana, a simple sword dealing at a damage of 12, can also be found in Phil's test cell for the Mothership Zeta DLC. Overall, the weapon isn't very much from the swords already in the game. Portable cover, taking the overworld model of a plasma mine, was likely intended to deploy a force field style portable cover while engaging in combat. Unfortunately, it looks like the tactical device was not fully realized, as deploying the portable cover will instead spawn in large pieces of wood that will disrupt NPC movement and scripted events. These portable covers can also be found in Phil's test cell. The Spanner, which appears to be a simple spanner wrench, deals 13 damage. The animations do not appear to be completely finalized, leading to the player holding the wrench quite strangely. In the Pip-Boy, the spanner shares its icon with that of a police baton. Several baseballs with various names appear in Phil's test cell. It's likely these were simply test objects for the DLC, though it is possible that they are meant to be something more, with the baseballs being placeholder models until they were finalized. And there you have it, all the cut content I could find for Fallout 3 and subsequent DLCs. I no doubt missed some things, so I apologize for that. Trying to create an all-encompassing encyclopedia is not as easy as it sounds, and you're almost always likely to forget something. If you know anything I missed, feel free to leave a comment to let me know and to let other people know. That way we can use this place as kind of an all-encompassing area to view cut content. As always, thank you so much for watching and sticking around until the end. I do plan on tackling the new Vegas cut content somewhat soon, but we'll be taking a few pit stops before we get there. I've been asked on quite a few occasions to try out covering ARGs, so we'll be experimenting with that style of video here soon. Thank you all so much for sticking around. I've been SinisterHeart, and I'll see you in the next video.